And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Thursday, September 8th. I'm your host for today's program, Paul DeMain. Many of the stories right here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com, and here are some of the news stories from the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. Phyllis J. Anderson has unseated incumbent Beasley Denson to win the race for the Choctaw tribal chief. In incomplete but unofficial returns from this Tuesday's election, Anderson polled 2,011 votes, or 56%, to win over Denson, who had 1,523 votes, and Shirley Martin Berg, who tallied 63. Choctaw Election Committee Chairman Bertie John says 241 absentee ballots were to be counted on September 7th, but the number of votes out would not make a difference in the final tally, as they were not enough to overcome Anderson's election. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has awarded nearly $1 million in grant money to tribal communities in South Dakota to help improve affordable housing and spur economic development. The Lower Brule Sioux Tribe will receive $900,000 as part of HUD's Indian Community Development Block Grant Program. The competitive grants are designed to improve or create housing and economic development opportunities for low to moderate income families. The grant program was established in 1977 to help tribes in Alaska Native villages to meet the needs of community development needs. The White House has nominated a Native American law specialist on the Michigan State University faculty to a seat on the advisory board for the St. Lawrence Seaway's Development Corporation. The administration announced the nomination of Winona Single this week. The agency is U.S. government-owned and is responsible for operating the portion of the St. Lawrence Seaway within U.S. territory. The Seaway runs from Lake Erie to the port of Montreal in Quebec. Singal is an assistant professor of law at Michigan State and associate director of the university's Indigenous Law and Policy Center. The 38-year-old Harvard Law School graduate teaches in Michigan State's American Indian Studies program and serves on the appellate court of the Little Traverse Bay Band of Odawa Indians. Descendants of former black slave owned by members of the Cherokee Nation are asking a federal judge to block a tribal election for principal chief until the tribe restores their full citizen rights, including the right to vote. In legal papers filed in Washington, D.C., descendants of the Cherokee Freedmen, as they are known, ask a federal judge to halt a September 24th election for principal chief of the Oklahoma-based tribe. A hearing on the request is set for September 20th before U.S. District Judge Henry H. Kennedy, Jr. Documents filed by attorneys for the Freedmen accuse the tribe of violating a 145-year-old treaty when the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court last month restored a voter-approved amendment denying citizenship to non-Native American descendants of tribal members, former black slaves. The court reversed a lower court ruling that had voided the amendment approved by the tribal voters in 2007. The court's decision affected an estimated 2,800 freedmen. The decision means freedmen will not be able to participate in a September 24th special election between Tribal Councilman Bill John Baker and former Principal Chief Chad Smith. Freedmen attorney John Veely said. He said the Freedmen had participated in the earlier election this year that a judge threw out as a result of a June 25th election dispute between the two men. The Freedmen were allowed to vote in that election. Veely said federal courts have consistently ruled that the Treaty of 1866, adopted shortly after the Civil War to help eradicate slavery, granted Cherokee citizenship to the Freedmen, including the right to vote. Almost a century ago, rising waters between the Dalles Dam forever changed a wild stretch of the Columbia River, submerging the salmon-rich Celilo Falls, the long narrows below it, and hundreds of ancient sacred petroglyphs. The surrounding lands long had been a gathering place for people from the Warm Springs, Yakima, Umatilla, Nez Perce, and other tribes. Some lived there permanently, while thousands more visited seasonally to harvest spawning salmon, to practice their religion, and to join annual opportunities at trade and to socialize. The petroglyphs, drawings that were chipped or ground into rock to relate tribal legends, hunting scenes, and mysticism, are evidence of those gatherings. One narrow slot just above the river had so many thousands of drawings that it was called Petroglyph Canyon. But as the reservoir rose behind the new dam, most of those rocks were covered by water. A few were pried away and stored at the dam, perched against a wall on the fish ladder beneath roosting birds, not a fitting home for what tribal elders considered to be sacred icons that provided a cultural connection between modern people and their ancestors. A plan to give them a more fitting permanent home took shape in 1996, and 8 years later, 43 petroglyph-covered rocks had been moved to the Washington's Columbia Hills State Park, an hour-and-a-half drive east of Portland, Oregon. The park is also home to the She-Who Watches, one of the most famous rock images in North America, but because of past vandalism, viewing of that image is limited to an escorted tour twice a week. Facing east upriver, the rocks sit within a mile from where most were taken in Petroglyph Canyon. The canyon is covered by Lake Sililo, the impoundment behind the Dalles Dam. And that's going to be the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. Join us tomorrow for the news with Kimberly Acosta, and watch for our live broadcast from Indian Summer on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this upcoming weekend. And thanks for joining with us. Miigwech.